you just voluntold yourself. Okay, so like Pastor said, a few weeks ago, I came to him and I'm like, hey, I believe that God has a message that he's given me to give to you and to give to the youth group. And I'm very excited for this. Thank you, Logan, for all your help. So I was on my way to Medford with work, and I have a lot of worship music going on when I drive, because I drive a lot. And God's just been dealing with me about my relationship with him. It's echoing. Turn me up. Thanks, Logan. Can you all see that? Yes. Good. That's what I want. So God was dealing with me about relationships that I have with my customers, with people in the church, with people in my own life, about how I build walls to keep people out, right? So I was challenged in reading Jericho, or reading Joshua chapter 6 and the fall of Jericho. And in my studies, I had to go back and find out prior to what happened to Jericho, what happened. And so we're going to read the story of Jericho and how it fell in Joshua chapter 6. But a little prehistory. The Israelites have been wandering in the wilderness for 40 years, okay? 40 years were up. Moses died. All the old people died, okay? It's time for the Israelites to claim the promised land, right? So when I was reading it in Joshua chapter 4 and 5, it talks about how they came across the Jordan River and how the Ark of the Covenant came out across the river, and they stood there holding the Ark, and the water split like the Red Sea, and they walked across on dry land. And in this time, it says it was when they walked across the land, on dry land, after the last ones came off the riverbed, it says the Jordan returned to flood stage. So this was not just any little river that they crossed. It was at flood stage. Has anybody seen the rivers down here when it's at flood stage? It's pretty incredible, right? So then it talks about how they have all the towns in the new land had a fear of the Israelites because of what God can do. Okay? So we build up walls, right? We build up walls. And I was reading the story of how Jericho fell, and God kind of was like speaking to me. He's like, okay, the Israelites were this, and they're powerful. And that's what we talk about, and how the Israelites marched around the city, right? But what about Jericho? What about Jericho? What were they protecting? In our lives, we build up walls to hide things, to protect things that we love. Right? So what about Jericho? What were they protecting? It says they were fearful of the Israelites because they knew that God was going to do something. Joshua chapter 6, it says, "Now the gates of Jericho were securely barred because of the Israelites. No one went out and no one came in." When God's going to change things, we put up our guard because we don't want it to change. We don't want to keep, we want to keep everybody in and everybody out, right? We don't want the sin in our life to get changed because we like it too much. Then the Lord said to Joshua, "See, I have delivered Jericho into your hands, along with its king and its fighting men. March around the city once with all the armed men. Do this for 6 days. Have 7 priests carry trumpets of ram's horns in front of the ark on the 7th day. March around the city 7 times with the priests blowing the trumpets. And when you hear them sound a long blast on the trumpets, have the whole army give a loud shout." Now see, when the Israelites crossed the Jordan River, they sent the army over first. They have the Ark of the Covenant go in the middle of the river, stand there, splits. Army goes across before the rest of the people. Why do you think they're fearful? Why do you think Jericho was so fearful? Well, if you see God just open up a river and see an army walk through, you're in trouble, right? You are in trouble. See, when I was driving and praying, that's kind of what I saw happening in my own life. And I'm like, man, I'm in trouble. God's going to shake me. God's going to do something to me. And then he says, I'm not just going to do it in you. I'm going to do it in your congregation. I'm going to do it in this town. So be prepared. So Joshua, son of Nun, called the priests and said to them, "Take up the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and have the priests carry trumpets in front of it." And he ordered the army, "Advance, march around the city with an armed guard going ahead of the ark of the Lord." Now, when I was growing up, I heard this story, and I was like, man, those Israelites, why would they march around a city? They must have to be pretty obedient. You know, just coming out of marching around the desert for 40 years, now we got to march around a city? What are you talking about? Right? More marching. When Joshua had spoken to the people, the 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets before the Lord went forward, blowing their trumpets, and the ark of the Lord's covenant followed them. The armed guard marched ahead of the priests who blew the trumpet, and the rear guard followed the ark. All of this time, the trumpets were sounding, but Joshua had commanded the army to not give a war cry. "Do not raise your voices, do not say a word until the day I tell you to shout. Then shout." So he had the ark of the Lord carried around the city, circling it once. Then an army returned to camp and spent the night there. Joshua got up early the next morning, and the priests took up the ark of the Lord. The 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets went forward, marching before the ark. So they just did it again and again and again. What do you think this is doing to Jericho? It's breaking down the interior of the city. Not the walls, but the interior. It's preparing the way for what God is going to do. So we continue on. On the 7th day, they got up at daybreak and marched around the city 7 times in the same manner, except on that day, they circled the city 7 times. The 7th time around, when the priests sounded the trumpet blast, Joshua commanded the army to shout, "For the Lord has given you the city and all that it is in it are to be devoted to the Lord. And then it says, only Rahab the prostitute and all who are with her in the house shall be spared because of she hid the spies that we sent. So Joshua sent spies in days before all this happened. And they were almost caught. And Rahab held them and hid them. Right? So God was preparing the way the whole time. And it says, but keep away the devoted things so that you will not bring about your own destruction by taking any of them. Otherwise, you will make camp of Israel liable to destruction and bring trouble on it. All the silver and gold and all the articles of bronze and iron are sacred to the Lord and must go into his treasury. So here we have them about to root the city. And they're hiding their jewels and they're hiding their silver. Jericho's tucking it away. And God's saying, Israelites, don't touch it. That's not for you. Right? The sin is not for you. In verse 20 it says, when the trumpet sounded, the army shouted, and at the sound of the trumpets, when the men gave a loud shout, the wall collapsed, so everyone charged straight in. See, God was preparing the way, and the walls came down when they shouted, and he said, here we go, let's go! I bet you guys thought I was going to break it, right? No. Because it wasn't the Israelites that broke the bricks. They had help. They had help. Right? They said, come on, let's go. And God helped them. See, they let God go before them. And as you can see, the walls didn't hold. See, how often in our lives do we let God come before us and we let him break down our walls and take the sin out of our life? But you got to remember, he said, give it all to God. He said, don't take anything into your own camp. Don't take the silver. So how often do we have sin in our lives and we break it and we let God set us free, but we walk over here and say, I'm going to take some of that, hide it. See, in chapter 7, we read about Achan. It says, but the Israelites were unfaithful in regard to the devoted things. Achan, son of Carmi, the son of Zimri, the son of Zerah, and the tribe of Judah, took some of them. So the Lord's anger burned against Israel. And in this chapter, we read about how the Israelites, they were so fearful to everybody in the land. They were like, oh my gosh, God just destroyed. They set the city on fire. They took everything out of Jericho. Walls, huge walls just came crashing down. But they go up against Ai. And they were routed. Ai is just a little itty-bitty town. And the Israelites were many. And they got routed because they were unfaithful. You know, we spend a lot of our time breaking down our walls and praying, God, please forgive us for our sins and take this sin away from me. I don't want it anymore. I don't want to do it. He breaks it, but yeah, we take a little bit of it with us. We don't truly give it all to him. In verse 15, chapter 7, verse 15, it says, whoever is caught with the devoted things shall be destroyed by fire, along with all that belongs to him. He has violated the covenant of the Lord and has done an outrageous thing in Israel. I don't know about you. I don't want to take anything with me. In youth group, we've been talking about covenants and giving up things. And on Friday, I had the youth guys, because we don't have any girls, we just have guys. I handed a piece of paper and said, write down 5 things that you want to have a covenant with God and that you want to change in your life. And I said, I'm going to read them. And you're going to put your name on them, but no one else is going to read them. So I can help keep them accountable. See, a covenant with God is a pretty strong thing. And I believe that the youth group and the youth of this generation needs to fear the consequences of breaking a covenant. See, Achan broke a covenant that the Israelites had with God. He took the sin in his life that he didn't want, or that the Israelites didn't want, and he hid it. We build walls in our lives to keep God out. And then we allow God to come in and change us and renew us through the Word. But yet we hold on to the things that he got rid of. And I'm challenging the youth group to get rid of the things in their life that's keeping God out, or keeping God from winning battles in your life. I was really praying on how to end this message. I know I didn't preach very long, but I believe it's powerful. What piece of Jericho are we hiding and holding in our lives? What piece of the city are we taking with us? See, Achan didn't sacrifice not touching anything. He didn't be like, okay, I'm not going to take the silver. I really need the silver or gold. I'm going to take it. I'm not going to take it. Like, this is what God wants me to do. But with no sacrifice, there's no victory. No sacrifice, no victory. The Israelites sacrificed their day marching around that city for 7 days. They sacrificed 40 years in the wilderness to have victory over Jericho and over all the lands so they could have what God promised them. But they lost a major battle of Ai because someone didn't follow what God had for them. So how often in our own lives do we not follow what God's calling us to do? How often do we not follow what God's trying to do and allow God to do what he's going to do? We hide behind the wall that he destroyed, and we try to rebuild it. And it's hard to rebuild the rubble, but we manage. We build up wall after wall after wall to hide the sin that is in our life. I'm telling you, God's wanting to kick it over. He's wanting to set some people free. With no sacrifice, there's no victory. If you want victory in your life, it's going to come at a cost. you're going to have to give up not the most dear things to you, but the hidden things that you don't want to give to God. The things deep down in your heart, the things that you do at night, the addictions you hold. See, God will come in and totally clean your life up, but you got to let him. You got to let him. Stop holding on to that little itty-bitty grain or little itty-bitty thing of gold that you think that might be so precious to you. Let God transform you and renew you so that you can win major victories for him. In chapter 8, it says, "Then the Lord said to Joshua, after he had cleansed Israel, after he had found Achan's sin and the sin in the covenant, the Lord said to Joshua, do not be afraid, do not be discouraged. Take the whole army with you and go up and attack Ai. For I have delivered into your hands the king of Ai, his people, his city, his land. You shall do to Ai and its king as you did to Jericho and its king, except that you may carry off their plunder and livestock for yourselves." See, when we attain victory over the things in our life, God brings blessing. I'm going to tell you a story that I didn't even tell my wife. It was a little over a year and a half ago. I went to an appointment, and my job is to diagnose things in the house and to kind of make things right. And if we have work there, measure the house and measure the floors and measure things like that. Well, I didn't do what I was supposed to because I got complacent and I thought I knew what this person needed. I wasn't a man of integrity. And I let myself get in the way of what God had for me. And God kept dealing with me and dealing with me. 3 weeks went by. I met with my bosses because this lady was angry that we didn't get this thing done. And they're like, "Did you do this?" And I was like, "Yes, I did that." So I lied to my boss. I spent a week not sleeping, a week fretting over my job, a week going home to my wife and being like, "I don't know why I'm so angry with myself. I'm just angry." Finally, I went to my boss in tears and I said, "You can fire me, you can do whatever, but I'm going to be a man of integrity. I didn't do what I was supposed to. I lied to you." I said, "I will accept the consequences of the sin in my life." I tore down my wall. My boss looked at me with grace and says, "If it happens again, you're fired." But then he goes, "I really admire the guts and the courage that it took for you to come to me and to tell me what you did." And I can tell you this, my life, financially, spiritually, every aspect of my life has been blessed. Tenfold from what it was, because I was doing really good then. I'm doing fantastic now.
Number one salesman in the state.
I'm the number one service tech in my company that I work with. I'm the number one sales for the service techs in my company. My family life is fantastic. I was able to buy a house when I thought that I would never be able to buy a house. All because I tore down my wall. And I got rid of that little thing that I was holding on to, that little white lie. So I challenge you, tear down the wall. Get rid of those things that you're hiding. Pastor, I'm done if you would like to come up.